Hey, welcome back to Room 237. This is John. I'm going to do another review for tonight. This was another movie I watched late last night. This movie popped up on my top random favorite movies of all time. That is Glengarry GlenRoss. I know it's a holographic case, so it's kind of hard to see. I love this movie to death. I think I first saw this on Netflix. I think I saw it 2 or 3 times on Netflix, and I actually just went out and bought the damn thing for like $3. It's a 2-disc. We have widescreen with features, full screen, which is still in the PS4 with features. Not much for features though. I mean, you get tiny little interviews, and then ABC Always Be Closing, which is a big part of this, which is just a documentary on the psychology of a salesman. This is based on a play by David Bebe. I think that's how you pronounce it. A pretty big play. I've never seen it. I'd love to. I would love to see this play. I think that'd be awesome. I said that on my recent video also. One of the nicknames for this movie is because one of the biggest plays is called Death of a Salesman. This and the play often gets called Death of a Fucking Salesman because of the profanity in it. Gene Shalit says this movie is a scorcher. Every performance is brilliant. I agree. That's one of the main reasons why I love this movie so much, is because every performance is fantastic. You got Al Pacino, Jack Lemmon, Alec Baldwin, Ed Harris, Alan Arkin, and Kevin Spacey. I wish Alan Arkin was on the cover. He deserves to be. Alec Baldwin's in one scene and he gets to be on the cover. Hell, I'm not even an Alec Baldwin fan. I just like him in Beetlejuice and what parts he's in The Departed. But his one scene in this is probably his best role. Kevin Spacey is great. Jack Lemmon is also great. Al Pacino. This is sort of when Pacino is kind of starting to ham it up quite a bit. This came out back in '92. So this was a couple years after Godfather 3, but this is when he's get to the croaky voice, and he's always always talking from fast to slow, really hamming it up, as they say, which means to just act way over the top. Basically, the story takes place at this one night, then the next morning. Basically, Pacino, Ed Harris, Jack Lemmon, and Alan Arkin are these 4 salesmen at this real estate firm, and they're told by Alec Baldwin they're having like a meeting that Pacino doesn't have to be at because he's the top salesman, super cocky. Told that you have you're pretty much all fired, but you have 1 week to redeem your jobs. Whoever the bottom 2 salesmen are at the end of the week are getting fired. The number 1 guy gets a Cadillac. Number 2 gets a set of steak knives. But I mean, even Alec Baldwin's speech during that whole scene, I mean, he does that thing with the brass balls. Like, to be a salesman, you gotta have brass balls. And I recently saw a thing about most iconic film props, and I guess the brass balls was on that list. If you remember a poster for that animated movie that came out recently, Boss Baby. It's funny, there's a poster where Boss Baby's in his suit and he has a thing of cookies. And the tagline is, "Cookies are for closers." Well, Alec Baldwin also says something similar in this film. That's what that's from. He tells Jack Lemmon in the beginning of the meeting to put the coffee down because coffee's for closers. I mean, Baldwin just, that whole scene about like Ed Harris is like, why do I gotta listen to this shit? And he's like, Because you drove a Hyundai to work, and I drove a $90,000 BMW. That's why I gotta sit and listen to this shit. He's like, you see this watch? Do you see this watch? That watch costs more than your car. You know how much I made last year? $970,000. I'm here to fucking help you. You know, he's trying to help, but he's also a raging dick. And so, you know, pretty much after that scene, there's all the paranoia of... Oh, and also... Because they're trying to sell... GlenRoss farms or whatever in Florida. And what a lead is a number... It's a card with a phone number. They're basically also telemarketers. So it's all these phone numbers, and they keep getting what are called dead leads. People that don't buy shit. And they say they have a pile of pink cards with Glengarry leads. Premium leads. People who buy shit. So pretty much they're stuck because they're given these shitty leads, but the only way they can get good leads is if they sell from the bad leads. So they're kind of stuck in this paradoxical, you know, purgatory. How do I sell to people that don't want to buy so I can get the good leads? Kevin Spacey's the boss, or the manager of the office. He's an asshole. I remember I said that 7 was probably his strongest performance. I don't know now, because I do have The Usual Suspects, which is a great film. But I love him in this. I mean, there's just... This to me is a perfect Kevin Spacey role. He's a guy that you kind of agree with, but at the same time, you know, he's kind of being a dick about things. Like Jack Lemmon wants to buy some of the good leads, but Kevin Spacey's being a jerk about it. Ed Harris is kind of a schmuck who'd rather just complain about everything. Alan Arkin's kind of a pushover. He just listens to what people talk about. But then you have Pacino and Lemmon. Now, see, Lemmon is more like an old school salesman. He keeps talking like really fast and uppity. Tries to get you to believe more on his side. Like when you see him talking to people he's trying to sell to. Or even when he's talking to Kevin Spacey, he'll say things like, right, now see, this is what I'm talking about. Two guys talking, we get what we want, huh? Alright, yeah, that's what I'm saying. You know, just kind of obnoxious. You know, sort of chuckles after everything he says when he's talking to a potential client, just trying to seem overly happy. While Pacino is sort of like this new age, almost poetic, metaphorical kind of salesman where you have no idea what he's talking about. Like the first half of the movie, he's across the street at this Chinese restaurant that they all frequent. And he's talking to Jonathan Pryce, who was in... I know he was in Brazil, the early 80s. I know he was in... He's also in Something Wicked This Way Comes. He's the guy that ran the carnival. Pacino does this long build-up before they even talk about land. And he's just like, you know, what happens when we die? Do we go to hell? Maybe. I don't think so. If you do, great. I don't. Hell is on earth. So be it. I won't limit it. He's like, of all the great fucks that you've had, what was it you remember? For me, it wasn't the orgasm. It's like, what does this have to do with the land? You know, he just goes off on these tangents that are almost, sounds like weird poetry. But he always sells. Al Pacino's the top seller. And so, you know, this is another movie I don't want to spoil too much, but, you know, two of the characters talk about breaking into the office overnight, stealing the good leads. And then, you know, you find out the next morning that someone did break in, steal all the phones, steal the good leads. And pretty much it's just Kevin Spacey's in his office with the cop, and one by one they're all spoken to. We don't see the conversation. we just see all the sort of skepticism and how everybody talks to each other out in the office. Like, there's a lot of fuck you back and forth between Ed Harris and Al Pacino. Because, Al Pacino's really cocky because he is on top of the world, because he is the top salesman. Ed Harris always gets full of himself when he makes a sale, but, they just don't like each other. And I would say Ed Harris's performance would probably be the one that's weaker. I mean, it's still very good. But it seems like when he's doing like the fuck you, fuck you, fuck you to Al Pacino, it's almost like because Al Pacino is hamming it up so much and cranking it up to 11 that it's like Ed Harris has to do it to keep up with him, even though he doesn't. I really like Alan Arkin. For those that don't know, he's the grandfather on Little Miss Sunshine. I like him in everything I've seen him in. I feel bad for him in this movie because he is a good guy. He's on a losing streak. And he's kind of a pushover. He just listens to whatever people tell him. And for like the first half of the movie, like when Alan Arkin and Ed Harris are talking to each other, they sort of, I don't know if it's meant to be funny, like a comedy, but they almost have like this Abbott Costello back and forth, or even, dare I say, Seinfeld. Because they just have this back and forth, just like, did you call him? Like, fuck, how does that go? It's just like, what are you talking about? What are we talking about? What are you talking about? What did I just say? What did you just say? What are we talking about? Did you call him? Did I say I called him? You said you called him. But alright, I called him. You called him. I just said I called him. You said you called him. So I called him. You called him. Just this. It's like, okay. So what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Okay. What? Just almost like Seinfeld. Like, it gets to a point where it's just like, oh, you're making my head spin. I mean, I love Alan Arkin, but I feel like that stuff could. I feel like that would work better in a play. It'd be funnier to watch two people do that on a stage, and that's the thing. This movie plays out like a play. I only hesitated because I don't like to say the same word. I don't like to use synonyms. Excuse me, not synonyms. Homonyms. Excuse me, homonyms. It does play out like a play. I mean, like, during the whole last act when Spacey's in his office with the cop, and one by one the guys are going in there, it's like you keep seeing Spacey come out, he says something, then he turns around and he goes back in his office. We just kind of see shadows in the window. We don't hear anything. It just kind of reminds me of, like, waiting backstage for your cue. Like, they're obviously doing nothing in there. They're not really doing anything. But I don't know. It's kind of hard to explain. It just kind of reminds me, like, I could definitely see how this would be a good play. And it feels like a lot of times when plays become movies, they try to make them bigger. They try to make them feel like movies. With this, I feel like they just try to show you what it was. And I thought that was a good idea. I don't mind if it plays out like a play. No, the ending is kind of sad. Not say what it is. I know not a lot of people probably aren't going to watch this. I think the only people that would really be interested are ones that have already seen it. But, I love this movie so much. And when I did my top 10 comedies, when I was talking about Mallrats and Clerks, I said I wish there were more movies like this. I would put this in that category. Not necessarily comedies, just... This movie is literally just guys talking. the entire movie. There's no action, there's no nothing. It's just talking. Like Clerks, or there's other stuff. More stuff happens in Clerks than in this. At least Clerks has the hockey game. But because I'm more of like an actor person. I'm more of a performance person. I like to see what actors can do. That's why I like these movies. That's why I like Tarantino films. That whole scene where it's just Jules and Vincent in the car talking about differences between Europe and America has nothing to do with the plot. It's just those two talking and bullshitting with each other. But I love that shit. I love seeing what actors can do with their characters. That's why I like movies where it's just talking. That's why I love Clerks so much. That's why I love this so much. But I also really like this story. I've never really gotten into a movie about salesmen and having to do shit like this. Like, one of them having to break in because their boss won't give them good leads, like, so they can actually make money. And, it's sort of like that paranoia and desperation. Like, if I don't think of something more, then I'm fired and I'm fucked. But yeah, if you're a Pacino or Spacey fan, especially, definitely check this out. Definitely worth it. Again, Pacino was nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. I don't know who won back in '92, but Kevin Spacey definitely. And again, I know all the shit with Kevin Spacey. I don't let that ruin what he's already created. I still enjoy it. But anyway, I didn't want to go on too long about this. I'm trying to make my videos a little bit shorter. But yeah, definitely. Like, my girlfriend, even last night, she came home and she was like, "This movie seems really boring." And I was like, "I'm sure a lot of people think it is, because it's just guys talking." But I love that. Except for Tarantino's Death Proof. I'm not interested in what they're talking about. I do think that movie's boring. But I would say the closest we have to that would be a Tom Hardy movie I watched recently called Lock, where he's just in his car the entire movie, and we just listen to his phone calls, and he's just driving from point A to point B. That you're just with him in his car literally the entire movie. But I love shit like that. I love seeing what actors can do. And I think this is a great example. Every performance is great. There's not one bad. I used to be really confused because the Jonathan Pryce character, who's Al Pacino's client, there is a part where the next day he tries to withdraw his sale, but he doesn't just come out and say it. Like, you get a lot of scenes where it's just like, I can't, And Pacino's like, "No, I don't know. I need you to tell me." He's like, I can't. It's like, you just want the guy to fucking spit it out. But I also watched this while I was during my heavy drinking period. I saw this for the first time sober last night, and I still really enjoyed it. That scene actually made a little bit more sense to me, oddly enough. But anyway, yeah, I don't want to go into too much about it. This is still one of my all-time favorite movies. I love it to death. Great performances, great little story. I would love to see the play. Highly recommend it. If you get bored, I'm sorry that there's not a lot of action. It's just dudes talking, but those are the kind of movies I like. Glengarry GlenRoss. Fantastic, fantastic movie. I love it. Anyway, that's all I got. Less than 20 minutes, not bad. So, for room 237, John and I'm out. Thank you.